Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now let's go. Jax Morgan stood at the kitchen counter, a steaming mug of coffee in his hand and a smile on his face. The Atlanta morning sun streamed through the window, catching the sparkle of Alyssa's engagement ring as she moved about the kitchen. "Only 3 more weeks," Jax said, his voice tinged with excitement. Alyssa turned, her blonde hair swaying as she met his gaze. "I can't believe it's almost here," she replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jax didn't notice the slight tension in her posture as he gulped down his coffee. His mind was already racing with the day ahead, a big project at work and last-minute wedding preparations filling his thoughts. "I've got to run," he said, planting a quick kiss on Alyssa's cheek. "See you tonight for dinner." She nodded, watching as he grabbed his briefcase and headed out the door. As Jax navigated the morning traffic, his phone buzzed. A text from his younger brother Derek. "Hey bro, we still on for lunch?" Jax sighed, a mix of affection and exasperation washing over him. Derek always needed something, but he was family. Jax felt that familiar pull of responsibility. "Sure," he texted back, "usual place at 12:30. The morning flew by in a flurry of meetings and phone calls. Before he knew it, Jax was sliding into a booth across from Derek at their favorite diner. "So," Derek began, flashing his trademark charismatic grin, "how's the wedding planning going?" Jax couldn't help but smile. "It's good, busy but good. Alyssa's got most of it under control." "That's great," Derek replied, his eyes darting to his phone. "Listen, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a bind." There it was. Jax felt his shoulders tense as Derek launched into a convoluted story about a missed sales quota and a potential eviction. It always came down to money with Derek. "How much?" Jax asked, cutting to the chase. Derek had the decency to look sheepish. $2,000 just until my next commission check comes in, I swear." Jax rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. "Derek, you're 30 years old. When are you going to get your act together?" I know, Derek said, holding up his hands. "I'm working on it. This is the last time, I promise." It was a promise Jax had heard before, but he found himself reaching for his checkbook anyway. Family was family after all. As he wrote out the check, Jax missed the flash of guilt that crossed Derek's face. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and wedding preparations. Before Jax knew it, the night of their engagement party had arrived. The backyard of their parents' suburban home was transformed, twinkling lights strung between trees, and the smell of barbecue filling the air. Jax stood near the makeshift bar, watching as Alyssa mingled with guests. "She's quite a catch," his father Roy said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You did good, son." Jax smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "Thanks, Dad." His mother Carla bustled over, pulling him into a tight hug. "Oh, my baby boy, all grown up and getting married." "Mom," Jax protested, but there was no real annoyance in his tone. He loved his parents, even if they could be a bit overbearing at times. The night wore on, filled with laughter and congratulations. As the party began to wind down, Derek clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. "If I could have a moment," he said, his voice carrying across the yard, "I'd like to say a few words about my big brother and his beautiful fiancée." Jax felt Alyssa tense beside him as Derek began to speak, but he was too caught up in the moment to notice. "Jax has always been there for me," Derek continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Through thick and thin, he's had my back, and now he's found someone who complements him perfectly." He raised his glass towards Alyssa. "To Jax and Alyssa, may your love only grow stronger with each passing day." The guests cheered, and Jax pulled Derek into a fierce hug. "Thanks, little brother," he whispered as they embraced. Jax missed the quick, loaded glance that passed between Derek and Alyssa. The days that followed were a whirlwind of final wedding preparations. Jax threw himself into his work, eager to wrap up a big project before taking time off for the honeymoon. It was late one night, nearly midnight, when Jax's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, He opened it, and his world shattered. There on the screen were photos and a video. Alyssa and Derek, tangled together in various states of undress. The timestamps showed they were recent, some from just days ago. Jax felt like he was going to be sick. His hand shook as he scrolled through the images, each one driving the knife deeper into his heart. He didn't sleep that night, his mind racing with questions and accusations. When morning came, he was waiting in the kitchen when Alyssa emerged, bleary-eyed and yawning. "We need to talk," Jax said, his voice cold and flat. Alyssa froze, sensing the change in his demeanor. "What's wrong?" Without a word, Jax slid his phone across the counter. Alyssa's face drained of color as she saw what was on the screen. "Jax, I can explain," she began, but he cut her off. "Explain what?" he snapped. "How you've been sleeping with my brother. How you've both been lying to my face." "It's not what it looks like," Alyssa pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "Those photos must be fake. Someone's trying to break us up." Jax laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Don't insult my intelligence, Alyssa. I know what I'm looking at." The argument that followed was explosive. Accusations flew, voices raised until they were both hoarse. Finally, Alyssa crumpled, sinking to the floor as sobs racked her body. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Jax stood over her, anger giving way to deep aching pain. "How long?" he asked, barely audible. Alyssa looked up, makeup streaked down her face. 6 months, she admitted. The confession hit Jax like a physical blow. 6 months, half a year of lies and betrayal. "There's more," Alyssa said, voice trembling. I'm pregnant." Jax felt the room spin. He gripped the counter to steady himself. "Is it mine?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Alyssa shook her head. "I don't know," she whispered. "It could be yours or Derek's." At that moment, Jax felt something inside him break. The future he had imagined, the life he was building, crumbled to dust. "Get out," he said, voice devoid of emotion. "Pack your things and get out of my house." Alyssa tried to reach for him, but he recoiled. "We're done," he said firmly. "The wedding is off. I never want to see you again." As Alyssa retreated, sobbing, Jax's thoughts turned to Derek, his own brother. The betrayal cut deep, leaving a wound he wasn't sure would ever heal. With shaking hands, he dialed his parents' number. When his mother answered, he could barely get the words out. "Mom," he choked. "I need to talk to Dad. It's about Derek." An hour later, Jax stood in his parents' living room, pacing like a caged animal. When the front door opened and Derek sauntered in, Jax saw red. "Hey, what's the emergency?" Derek's words were cut off as Jax's fist connected with his jaw. "You son of a bitch," Jax growled, grabbing Derek by the shirt and slamming him against the wall. "How could you?" Derek, eyes wide with shock, managed a twisted grin despite the blood trickling from his lip. "You can't blame me," Alyssa came on to me. Jax's fist flew again. "She's carrying your child," he roared. "You destroyed my future." It took both Roy and Carla to pull Jax off his brother. Derek slumped to the floor, face a mess of blood and bruises. "Boys, stop this," Carla cried, voice shrill with panic. "We're family." Roy stepped between his sons, face ashen. "What in God's name is going on here?" Through gasps and sobs, the story came out. Carla collapsed onto the couch while Roy stood silent, disbelief etched on his face. "Jax," Roy finally said, voice heavy with disappointment, "violence is never the answer. We need to sit down and talk this through." "Talk it through?" Jax stared at his father in disbelief. "Your brother made a mistake," Carla interjected, pleading. "He's still family. We can work this out." Jax looked from his mother to his father, then to Derek, being tended by Carla. Realization hit him like a ton of bricks. They were going to forgive Derek again, just like always. "No," Jax said, his voice cold. "Not this time. He's not my brother anymore. And if you choose him, then I don't have parents either." He turned and walked out, ignoring Carla's cries and Roy's calls. In the car, rage and despair warred within him. He had lost everything: fiancé, family, future. He drove through the Atlanta night, unseeing and uncaring. Over the next few weeks, Jax retreated into himself. He ignored Alyssa's calls, hired a lawyer, demanded a paternity test, and resolved to cut Derek out of his life forever. When the test results came back and confirmed the child wasn't his, he felt equal parts relief and sadness. Alyssa pleaded for forgiveness, but he denied her. Derek tried to make amends, but Jax refused to listen. He moved out of Atlanta, taking a remote engineering job in a quiet cabin in North Carolina. Days were filled with work, nights with thoughts of revenge. Anonymous information arrived: Derek's shady dealings, Alyssa's continued hardships. He used it to dismantle Derek's career and reputation. As months passed, Jax realized none of these acts would truly heal him. Yet he followed through, ensuring Derek hit rock bottom, ensuring Alyssa knew he would never return. In a final confrontation at a bar, Jax humiliated Derek publicly, ensuring everyone knew Derek's true character. He met Maya, who admitted sending the incriminating evidence as revenge against Derek. Jax felt no sympathy, only a grim satisfaction. Eventually, Jax accepted a job in Seattle, leaving behind the ashes of his old life. Before leaving, Alyssa tried one last time to speak to him, mentioning the baby she had. He refused to listen. There was nothing left to say. On his last night, Jax stood in his empty apartment, no remorse in his heart. He had survived the betrayal, emerged stronger and colder. He decided forgiveness was overrated. He would refuse to forget, moving forward without looking back. That was victory enough. Without a hint of nostalgia, he started his engine and drove away into the night, leaving the people who had burned his life to the ground behind him.